And equality is fantastic because it means that you treat everybody exactly the same. However, in this day and age, often there are certain people that require that extra something different. Or I heard a story, I was watching a video yesterday and she spoke about apples and oranges. And she said, so if you've got 2 kids and you go ahead to the fruit bowl and you give them both oranges, but the one kid is allergic to the orange, that is not equity. You're treating them the same. You're giving both of them the orange. However, the one is allergic. So the thing is, you perhaps need to get them an apple or a banana or whatever suits them. And I thought that was such a great analogy because it's something that we always think, well, if I treat everyone the same, then it will have the belonging that we're all looking for. But often we need to look at it differently. So I'm going to now, it gives me great pleasure and honor to introduce a very good friend of mine, Ntombi Mhangwani, Dr. Ntombi Mhangwani. And I think Ntombi is the most amazing person that embraces equity every single day. It was a thrill for me that she agreed to come and speak to us this morning. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Ntombi, but I think you need to spend a bit more time with her to really get to know the impact that she's having. So in September 2019, Ntombi won the Gender Mainstreaming Awards Positive Role Model for the C-suite. In 2020, she came 3rd finalist in the Inclusive Leader category. All amazing, okay. And the Inclusive Leader category is one where you actively sponsor others up the ranks. So for Ntombi, she embraces this on a day-to-day basis, and she really looks at the young people. I think we are both involved in Voices of Change, and Voices of Change is a movement that we are bringing men and women together to ensure that we have this movement in terms of equality and equity in the workplace. And it also shows us that global organizations can work together. No matter what business you're in, no matter if you're competitors, there is a space. And so Ntombi tells the story of where there was a young lady at Accenture, when she was at Accenture, that approached Ntombi. She was quite nervous to approach Ntombi because Ntombi was, you know, very, very senior. And this young lady approached Ntombi and said, I've got this idea. And straight away, Ntombi backed that, even though it had come from somebody junior in the organization. So she actively looks at opportunities for that. In July 2021, Accenture awarded her the Equality Champion Award at Accenture. In May 2022, Ntombi was named the Break the Ceiling, Touch the Sky 2022 list of Africa's most inspirational women in leadership. Prior to joining Vodacom Business, Ntombi held senior marketing and communications roles in various multinational companies such as Accenture, Schneider Electric South Africa, Dimension Data, and MTN, to mention a few, with a scope that covered the rest of Africa and the Middle East. Ntombi's journalistic, marketing, and communications experience spans a period of more than 23 years. She has a huge hunger for continued learning, no doubt, an ability to master and implement the new knowledge she has learned. She holds a Doctor of Philosophy in Management of Technology and Innovation with a thesis that she's going to cover here today. She also holds a Master of Business Administration from Henley Business School, as well as an honors degree in Journalism and Media Studies from Rhodes University. Please help me welcome the newly appointed Executive Head of Marketing at Vodacom Business, Dr. Ntombi Mhangwani.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good morning. I'm told people were Googling me. Zizwe, somebody else. Good morning, it's such an honor to be here, and happy International Women's Day. Good morning to everybody else who is watching us online. I hope what I have to share with you today will leave you with some food for thought and also challenge you as leaders. Please don't stress about seeing many words on my slides. This is an academic journey, so there are going to be many words. But if you listen to me, you will understand what I am saying. So don't stress about the many words on the slides. Just listen to the journey I'm talking you through, and then we will be good to go. Please also understand that I am not all about my job. And it's always so strange to me when I have to listen to people introducing me. I'm like, that's not the person my mother raised, but in any case, let's stand up and go, you know? So I am way more than my job. I mean, Cole has mentioned some of the things, but I like to introduce all of me. So at the end of the day, I am my father's child. My full name is Ntombi because my mom and dad have 5 daughters, and I am number 5. So my name is technically the conclusion, right? But my father will not admit if I am the conclusion or not. My sisters are my best friends. I come from a very tight family where we actually have a Mhangwani Wall of Fame. You're only allowed on the Mhangwani Wall of Fame if you have a degree. If you don't have a degree, you're not on the Mhangwani Wall of Fame. Now, who wants not to be on the Mhangwani Wall of Fame when everybody else is on the Mhangwani Wall of Fame? I have my partner, whom I love dearly, and I am the greatest auntie babes to 7 of my nephews and nieces as well. And if you want to get to know me, like Cole said, have a bite to eat with me. I'm really easygoing. I'm not hierarchical. I don't see positions. I see people, and I love connecting and engaging with people. And if you're gonna meet with me, we've got to have a gin and tonic, guys. That's it, all right? So, I mean, Cole has spoken through all of this, but what we need to focus on is the fact that I'm going to share with you the journey I chose to undertake for my PhD, and the fact that I built a leadership model for what we are now calling the 4th Industrial Revolution. And I'll tell you how I got there as well. So obviously, we're going to go through a number of chapters. I'm going to cover theory in 2 minutes flat. Don't stress about that. I'm going to cover leadership. I'm going to tell you the chapters I spoke about. I'm going to tell you some of the research I looked at, and I'm going to give you the findings. And then I'm also then going to share the model. The model I built that I believe leaders need to be showing up in that particular way. Let me not go into it yet. So, like I said, where did my journey start? I read a book titled Exponential Organizations by Salim Ismail. That's where my journey started. When I read this book, Exponential Organizations, why other organizations are 10 times larger than yours, I couldn't believe what they were saying. And why did I read this book? I joined an organization that was talking innovation, technology, etc. And I thought, I can't believe what these people are saying, so let me read the book. I read the book. The book explained to me how people running a company in their mother's garage were making more money than people who are actually in these types of buildings, right? So that is exponential growth, whereby you are looking at how companies that are starting in little startups are actually using the power of technology to grow their businesses versus traditional businesses, big buildings, many people, many leaders, and the difference between the traditional business and the accelerating business that operates using a completely different set of rules. This is the book that led to me conducting my research as well. So let's cover a little bit of theory. It's all about leadership, ladies and gentlemen. It really is about leadership. So like I said, don't stress about the slides. But I'm quoting a few authors here who look at leadership. I went back all the way to the 1800s to look at what is the theory of leadership. Why is it in the 1800s we were told that people are just cogs, they're part of the production line, etc., etc. And I moved from the 1800s coming all the way up to the now. And I learned different models about the way leaders lead in different ways. But here I want to focus on a few things. So here I've obviously quoted about 3 authors, right? But what you need to focus on is the bold. And I say, Plaghi basically says, a leader deals with emotions. excites camaraderie and guides vague notions of correct actions. A leader determines, organizes, directs, compromises, etc., right? Look at the second one, where we say, according to this, management is about controlling, whilst leadership focuses on the creation of a common goal where we're trying to excite people, a vision, versus just commanding people. This is just the theory, and I'm going to unpack it. I'm setting the tone, okay? And then we also hear that leaders turn vision into success by building winning teams, by not ignoring problems that will not go away, by focusing on innovation and dealing with the risks. He also says his point of view on leadership is that it is built on a foundation where leaders listen to their followers, encourage their followers, have open conversations, and ensure that they are being recognized not only as teams but also as individuals. And the last one, leaders have a vision, passion, authenticity, great communication skills, competencies, etc. Now, some of you are going to say, but Ntombi, we know this, we are leaders ourselves. But the one mistake we often make is that you need to be able to determine, are you working with leaders or are you working with managers? At the end of the day, we need a combination of the two. In every organization, you need managers and you need leaders. But remember, are you looking for transactional leadership or transformational leadership? And my point of departure is that in a world where we are being led with technology being the accelerator, with technology being the differentiator, I argue that you need transformational leadership. You need leaders who are just not focusing on the transactional, Ntombi came to work at 8, left at 5, and then we pay each other. It's all the in-between and the emotional intelligence that comes with it as well. So that's just the foundation. And then you will see that I also then say, what is the difference? I have got a chapter where I look at the difference between management and leadership, but this is really the summary for me. So I say leaders create visions of future business realities. Managers are not necessarily thinking ahead, they are dealing with the now, connecting the dots operationally and making sure the team just gets to do day to day, but they're not necessarily thinking of the future and being transformational as well. We also say leaders focus on innovation and manage change in order to turn vision into reality. Guys, you need to get to a point where you understand that in organizations, somebody may be in a leadership position, somebody may be in a management position. It doesn't mean they are a good leader or a good manager. And we need to be able to distinguish between that. And we also need to be able to say, what is the leader that I need to take my organization to its future state? And those are uncomfortable but difficult conversations that we need to be having as well. Leaders focus on people, team dynamics, relationships to energize and mobilize followers. Leaders are not afraid to tell their people, I don't know the answer. What do you think? Why don't we solve together? Leaders are not afraid to actually be vulnerable in front of their people and to say, I believe you can also have the answers. And leaders are also not afraid to say, I'm going to be in this position for 3-5 years. I'm looking for the next leader after me. Raise your hand and I will coach you. That's leadership. That's transformational leadership, ladies and gentlemen. So while leaders use their power to influence, motivate, and inspire people to serve a meaningful purpose, it should be clear that both management and leadership are required. But what I am saying as well is that the type of leader you need is a leader that is going to change the lives of the people in the team. All right. So what is the leadership challenge? I started 4 years ago, now 5 years ago, realizing that with what is being said about the fourth industrial revolution, we cannot afford to have leaders who are either authoritative and say my way or the highway, leaders who only believe that things can work in a particular way. We've done it this way, it's worked for 10 years, therefore it will always work. I was challenging all of those notions. Leaders who think you can't come and tell me, I've been in this job for 25 years, therefore I know what I'm talking about. I was challenging all of that. So as you can see, I say the fourth industrial revolution really brings about changes where we need to let go of things of the past as well. We also then need to see how are organizations embracing digital and being digital from inside. I think a lot of people are taking for granted, and I certainly did. I worked for a managing consulting company that was dealing and leading in innovation and technology. The mistake you make is assuming that because everybody's talking fourth industrial revolution, everybody's talking digital transformation, the mistake you make is assuming organizations get it, number one. Number two, organizations are implementing it. Number three, organizations have taken their employees on the journey and they're implementing the changes. And let me tell you now, you are very wrong. Very wrong, guys. People are saying the right things, but the actual process of undertaking, implementing technology, understanding and allowing people to not feel threatened by it, to not feel like their jobs are going to be taken. Everybody is very hesitant, and it is this hesitation that is also not allowing us to build more jobs. So do not work from the premises that everybody gets it and everybody's implementing it. That is not the case at all. So I'm saying, given we need people to adopt technology and employees also need to adopt technology, what type of a leader do we then need to lead, to drive this new economic, digital environment we live in? What behaviors and what roles should those leaders be showcasing? How should they show up? How do they need to unlearn, to relearn, to be the relevant leader, to take the organization into the future? How are we building those sustainable leaders? So what I was trying to achieve was the following. I said the aim was to study and develop and validate. I'll explain the validate. A leadership model that will be suitable for leaders. When I say validate, I'm talking about, I did the research on the various and many years of leadership styles, models that have existed over the years. I then took what was best from each one to build a model. I then took this model to an organization and I said, I have built this model and I think this is what is required for people and leaders in the fourth industrial revolution. I then said, do you agree with what I have put up? They then looked at my model and actually suggested changes. They said, you need to add this, you need to add that, based on their lived experience. So I then adapted my model. I then took it after, and by the way, when I say adapted it after I interviewed the managers. Because I took the model, I said, you are the managers, you're the ones who need to implement this. So, do you agree that this model makes sense for people who need to lead in the fourth industrial revolution? They said, yes, 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 add this, add that. I adapted it. And then I customized it for them, because they are the leaders, right? And after I customized it, I took it to the employees that these managers actually manage. And I said, your leaders say this is the model required for leaders to be relevant in the fourth industrial revolution. Do you agree that your managers are actually living up to this model? I'm sure you want to know the answer to that, right? So let's continue. So really, it is what I was trying to achieve is to develop an understanding of the fourth industrial revolution, to look at how people respond to the changes that come with the fourth industrial revolution. I looked at a number of theories going all the way back to the 1800s, and then I conducted interviews with the managers, and after that, customizing it, then also testing, are these managers complying to their own model as well? Okay, so everybody understands the journey now, right? So when you look at the chapters I looked at what is the fourth industrial revolution, what is the impact going to be on human beings. And understand, guys, I'm talking fourth industrial revolution. By the time I was finishing my PhD, I was actually talking about the fifth industrial revolution, because they just merge into each other like that. And people are now also talking the sixth industrial revolution. Now, we at some point in time need to go home, ladies and gentlemen. So I can't go into the fourth and the sixth, but understand, I touch on that in my research because the revolutions are just merging into each other so fast. You've seen the metaverse. Metaverse is part of the fifth and the sixth industrial revolution. So this model also has to evolve, but is linked very much to all the escalating revolutions that we're coming with as well. I then looked at the conceptual framework, and then I also spoke to you about how I looked at the compliance. All right. The research methodology, I actually looked at 5 phases of my study. I looked at leadership theory, I looked at the qualitative, the literature review, I then spoke about the interviews, I spoke about the conceptual framework I put together, and then I spoke about how I validated it. We're going to spend time on the actual model. So the results. Like I said, the research I did on leadership, if you look at this area here, I've got 13 roles, came up with the fact that there are 13 roles leaders in a digital economy and in a fourth industrial revolution need to be. If you want to be relevant as a leader, let me start by saying, guys, I've actually emailed Carl the model, because I can see all the phones are coming up. I knew deliberately that everybody would want to actually look at the model, what the roles are, and the behaviors. So you can't blame me. If you don't get it, it's Colleen. Colleen has got it. I'm more than happy to share the model and for people to interrogate it, but I know people will want to see what does it mean, what is the role, what are the behaviors. Okay. So in my literature review, I came up with 13 roles. I said there are 13 roles that leaders need to show up as. I said a leader in the fourth and the fifth industrial revolution needs to be an innovator. They need to be a collaborator, a systems thinker, a customer experience designer, a change director, ambiguity, volatility, and agility mentor. Don't worry, I've got definitions for all of this, because you're going to wonder, what on earth is this? A virtual project team manager, a data analyst and manager, technology ethics and values manager, problem solver, lifelong learner, development facilitator, empowering leader, and an emotional intelligence coach. I came up with these 13 roles that I then said, what do you think? The managers then asked me to make a few changes. So we're also going to talk about those changes. What I did after coming up with the 13 roles, I said, fine, but what is the definition of this thing, of each role? What is the definition? And after the definition, what are the behaviors that accompany each role? So that's what we're going to be looking at. All right. So based on the interviews I conducted, the definition of 7 roles were left unchanged. 7 were unchanged by the managers, but they did make some adjustments. So they were happy with my definition and my behaviors when it came to innovator, collaborator, systems thinker, ambiguity, volatility, agility, etc. You can see them there at the bottom. Those, they were happy with the roles, the definitions as well. However, when it came to the others, these are the changes. Remember, these are the managers. The managers are saying, Ntombi, we like your model, but we also think you need to make these changes. So now I'm customizing it to the managers. And the managers asked me to change the following. The role of the customer experience designer was renamed to customer experience director, and the definition was adjusted as well. The role of the change manager was renamed to change director, and the definition was also adjusted. The role of the data analyst and manager was renamed to data interpretation and application manager. Are you guys seeing why they would want the changes to happen? All right. The role of the problem solver was renamed to problem solving facilitator, which is transformational leadership. You solve with others, right? And the name of the empowering leader was retained, but the definition was adjusted. And the name of the EQ, emotional intelligence coach, was retained, but the role definition was also adjusted. Happiness so far, guys? You with me? All right, let's go on. So, over and above the 13, remember I said I came up with 13 roles and behaviors. They said, Ntombi, we feel you've got to add 2 more. You've got to add 2 more. The managers said they believe leaders of the 4th Industrial Revolution also need to be authentic storytellers. And I agree. Who disagrees? I absolutely agree, because the power of storytelling is what organizations are using to be able to sell what they do and who they are. They also then said I needed to add the role of an entrepreneur leader. Now let's be clear, there's a difference between this and entrepreneurial, right? So let's look at it. The definition: creating an entrepreneurial culture where self-motivated employees are allowed to challenge paradigms and take initiative to proactively explore new business opportunities in order to generate additional revenue streams. This is where the innovation lies, guys. If people adapt this mentality of this is also my own organization, they constantly find new ways to innovate and to bring in new ways of thinking, new ways of working in the organization, thereby boosting the organizational capability and productivity and revenue. So we went from 13 to 15, the 2 added by the managers, correct? So we're now going to talk about the roles. We're going to talk about the role. You've seen them. Let's look at the behaviors. I want to emphasize that when I built the model, I had between 7 to 10, 13 behaviors for each role. However, I actually then asked the managers, what are the top 5? What are the top 5? I then also asked the employees, what are the top 5? So if you want all the behaviors, you know who you talk to? But in this particular presentation, I focused on the top 5, mostly because the page couldn't take more than that. That's the main reason. But if you want all of the behaviors, they are available for you. So let's go. We've got number 1, innovator, and we've got the definition. An innovator is the leader we need for the 4th Industrial Revolution. And what does that mean? It means they need to facilitate the process of actions, of using digital technology to develop and implement new things. So I give you a definition and I give you the behaviors that an innovator needs to illustrate. Build a culture that encourages innovation, create a shared and compelling vision for innovation, communicate the purpose of the reason or the need to innovate, motivate and inspire the team to innovate, capitalize on individual strengths. Once again, transformational leadership. Do you guys agree? Once again, do not assume leaders are doing this. That's just the reality, guys. I've learned about this. Leaders are not necessarily leading in this particular way, and that's why we're saying, with the digital revolutions we are living through, people need to seriously unlearn and relearn new behaviors. So that's number 1. Number 2, collaborator, a leader who encourages 2 or more parties who may or may not have worked together previously to create networks of peoples in organizations working jointly to achieve common goals. What are the behaviors? Break down silos. How many of you work in organizations where there's silos? Yeah. Do you see what I mean about, to me, this is like obvious, but actually it's not, because it's not being practiced, it's not being implemented. So breaking down silos, promoting trust as well, building and leveraging on business networks and relationship, creating a working environment where there is psychological safety. It's the biggest thing that's come out of COVID, the fact that we now talk about mental health. That's the conversation Paul and I were having. Encourage two-way communication, empathy, build trust, clarify roles, key performance metrics, and collaborate with stakeholders. Guys, is this new to you?
No.
Is it being practiced?
No.
Okay, so all right, so that was number 2. Number 3, systems thinker. Now this is my favorite. If you are a leader, you've got to look at the bigger picture. You cannot afford to look at what you are doing independently without connecting the dots about how it affects the rest of the organization. So a systems thinker is a leader who thinks broadly. His or own thinking focused on the bigger picture and has the ability to identify and analyze the interrelatedness of all the elements. The behaviors. The leader must be able to look holistically at the bigger picture, collect and analyze data to observe and identify behaviors of patterns, not only in their area, but areas that also influence and have an impact on their area. Identify, analyze interrelatedness in all systems, pick up the patterns, and leverage the patterns in the system to be able to thrive. Questions? Everybody understanding the systems thinker? Then we have also the customer experience director. Remember, this is one of the roles that the managers asked me to update the definition and the naming as well. So this is a servant leader who promotes team environment, encourages employees to design exciting products, create memorable customer experiences that capture the imagination and make pleasant, rational, and emotional impact on customers. Guys, this is talking about the world of experience. It talks about when you go, I mean, my best example when it talks about experience is when you go to Dubai. Do you ever forget the experience you go to Dubai? Because they've got no snow, they've got no rain, but suddenly there is snow inside a mall, you can ski inside a mall. The experience of what they deliver for you is all about pulling you, creating stickiness, and making you to want to come back. Dubai is all about delivering experiences. And what I am saying, organizations need to start delivering experiences, because the new type of employee that you are now hiring wants to know, are you looking after my mental health? Do you care about equality? Do you care about me being a parent and living a balanced life? Can I go and pick up my child and also work later? And guys, some managers and leaders cannot relate to this. They're never going to be relevant. So as you go and you look through the model, you need to realize that some people will be able to take the journey, but some people are going to be left behind because they simply cannot relate to the new changes that are happening as well. So we also have the change director. And the change director, I'm absolutely a change director because I always challenge existing paradigms. It's not about coming into an organization and agreeing that this is how things were done, therefore we're going to continue doing things the way things are done. We're never going to achieve the type of accelerated, exponential profits and revenue if we continue doing things the same way. So that is why we need these change directors. And also, guys, this part that says communicate the reasons and the benefits of change, it also came up in one of the other behaviors. You cannot assume that the people in your teams get it. They just know there's a fourth industrial revolution, but you need to help them understand, why is it relevant for me as Ntombi? Why do I even need to know what this thing is? How will it impact my job? You've got to take that intentional journey of explaining, this is what it is, this is what it means, this is how it'll impact you positively, this is how it'll impact you negatively, this is why I need you to buy into it. Assuming that people will just hear it out in the media, it will automatically translate, is danger, because they're going to understand it differently to the vision you are building as well. So you've got to be deliberate about communicating how it impacts the organization, what the plan is, and what they need to do for them to achieve the vision, objectives, and goals that we are setting ourselves in this technology-led environment. Okay? We then have, this is the one that's got the long title, Ambiguity, Volatility, Agility, Mentor. Essentially, there's a lot of gray in the fourth industrial revolution and the digital economy. There's a lot of ambiguity, and a lot of people live in a world that is very black and white. Leaders need to help them deal with the ambiguity and the gray that exists in between. Because life is not black and white, ladies and gentlemen. There's lots of gray, and then I bring the color. All right? So, how are we helping people do that? Understanding uncertainty, insecurity, and volatility. I write a chapter in my thesis that looks at how people actually respond to these changes. And guys, people panic. There's a lot of emotional distress. There's a lot of resistance. There's a lot of, this is not for me. So you've got to absolutely acknowledge that as well. And to you as a leader, I might be a future-focused leader that is comfortable and happy with taking on new things. Other people are uncomfortable with change. Acknowledge that. People don't necessarily embrace change in an easy way. So you've got to take them along on it as well. You've also got to help them, show them how they're going to cope. What is the plan? Are you going to put in courses that they must do to help develop them? Or how are you going to make sure that they become relevant in their new roles as well? Okay. And how do you mentor those employees who feel that actually this is outside of what they can do, and also coach them so that they know that they can still be relevant in the fourth industrial revolution? So the virtual team project manager. So you see, this one makes me laugh because a lot of companies are now forcing people to go back to the office. Yeah. Do you see why now I have this thing? Yes. I have it because the reality is the world is changing. And I also understand the challenges that organizations are going through in terms of there's many large buildings, they are sitting empty as well, and we do need a combination of the two. But the reality is when it comes to our leaders, we can't afford to have leaders who are thinking, if I didn't see Ntombi at the office, clock in at 8 o'clock and leave at a certain time, it means she's not working. If we're able to do it during COVID, you need to know that you need to measure people on their outputs. And some managers are not designed to manage people virtually. So you cannot assume because they did it for COVID, because Ramaphosa said they must do it, by the way. It's not like they wanted to do it, but Ramaphosa said they must do it. It doesn't mean that they are comfortable with doing it. And that's why in the leaders themselves, we need to understand, do we have leaders who are able to understand that I'm managing a team that is remote, I'm going to actually measure them on their outputs and not stress about, did they do the work at 10 o'clock in the morning or 10 o'clock in the evening? Okay. And you need, as a leader, to still be able to motivate and inspire people virtually. Now that's difficult. You need to manage their mental health virtually. You need to give them performance discussions virtually. And when they're cracking up, you might actually need to go and drive to somebody, check on them, etc. But this is what is required. Different behaviors are required in managing a virtual team. Data interpretation and application manager facilitates the interpretation and application of data to make smarter, connected, collaborative decisions to improve efficiencies, productivity, and profitability. Guys, doesn't matter which department you're in, you've always got to have the data. Speaking about my area in the marketing space, I always tell people, the successful CMOs and the successful marketing directors are the ones that when they are at an exco table about to present, they don't just present the pretty pictures of the party that they had last week. It's about saying, this is what I'm doing in my department to support you as the salesperson. If your target is this, I'm going to then make my target ABC. And you're speaking data at the business table to show that you are relevant. And your marketing activities or whatever activities you are doing are based on data, and your decisions are based on data. So please make sure you understand that data is what helps us make better informed decisions that improve efficiencies as well. Use digital technologies, utilize a variety of digital technologies to obtain data systems, collect, analyze, structure, organize data as well, and also make sure protect the safety of data. As we all know, data is the new gold. The new gold. And we've got to have leaders who are using data to make their decisions, and using the data that comes from the new technologies that make up the fourth industrial revolution. Technology, ethics, and values manager. Now this is important. Remember, technology is a wonderful thing, but technology also has its disadvantages. It's created by human beings. So when they create all these apps and these platforms and these softwares, they could actually put in their own personalities into those apps, platforms, software. So human beings need to be very much aware that ethics is required to use technology the appropriate way, because you can use technology for bad, right? And we don't need to talk about, is it the ransomwares? Ransomwares using technology for bad, right? Whereby you are able to actually access people's systems and shut them down and threaten them that they must pay you as well. So we are saying, what are the behaviors? Define and communicate a set of values to guide ethical decisions, how we are going to use technology in an ethical way as well. And that's why, guys, there's something called technology for good, because people can use technology for good, or you can actually use it for other things as well. Analyze ethical context, the context and the consequences of using that technology. Define ethical issues relevant for the technology as well, and gather the facts and assess the alternatives in providing direction for ethical decision making. Using all the technology, review the beliefs about responsible technology use as well. If you look at another report, I think it's called the Technology Vision, in there they also look at how technology really can actually have a bias. So when we work with technology, we still need to have the human intervention. The human intervention being that human beings at the end of the days are the one who decide how we use the technology, and we need to instill the right behaviors into the technology. So you can see that, isn't it, AI is made up of what we feed into it. So what we feed into it is what it will also then spew out for us. So there are ethical considerations when you are looking at technology. Number 10, the problem-solving facilitator. I've got the definition there, but really it is making sure that you are not coming and actually providing the answers. Those days are long gone. No one leader will have the answers for everything. You need to sit with your clients, you need to sit with your people, you need to sit with your team and say, how do we solve together? So the behaviors that are required: facilitate an identification of problems that need cognitive intervention and create a decision-making framework that cannot be automated. Facilitate the gathering analysis of all relevant data on applicable business problems. Conduct root cause analysis to distinguish between problems and symptoms, identify the pros and cons, and also facilitate the selection and implementation of the most profitable, sustainable solutions as well. So problem solving is no longer about the leader solving alone, but looking at what can technology do for me, what can people do for me, what are the other stakeholders outside of my current organization that I also need to be working with. I'm sure you've seen a lot of organizations are building what is called platform businesses. Who knows about platform businesses? Beautiful. Platform businesses, Vitality is a platform business, guys. Because Vitality doesn't just operate for discovery, they could implement it, the solution, the Vitality, the program can be implemented in an environment outside of a discovery. You could copy it and try and adjust it for a Woolworths, etc., etc. And a platform business is looking at how, let me give you another example. Okay, here's an example. I know that Vodacom provides cell phone networks capabilities, but then they partnered with Standard Bank and they partnered with the mine. What did they do? The three companies, Standard Bank, Vodacom, and the mine, came together to solve for a problem for the mining community in the DRC. Vodacom knows that we have the connectivity, we've got the mobile phones, right? We've got the apps that we build. Standard Bank has a system where they've got a clocking in system at the office for the employees. That's a system they can sell, by the way. The mines know that they need connectivity and they need to make sure that employees, because we've got remote The employees in the mines don't necessarily come into head office and sit and listen to town halls. So how do they communicate? Vodacom brings in a base station into the mine, brings in the cell phone, brings in the data. Standard Bank brings in the security elements, and then the mine is now distributing phones to employees for them to be able to connect, to be able to get their pay slips, to be able to know what's going on in the company, access policies. They never had all of that before. So it's companies coming together and saying, yes, we work in this specific area, but we need to partner with other companies to build one solution that improves the lives of communities. Those are platform businesses that are working for good and solutioning, and not saying because we're a bank, we only work with bankers. We can work with other companies as long as we solve for good as well. Number 11, lifelong learning and development facilitator. Guys, I'm sure you know and understand that we are all having to face the fact that we have to learn about this technology. There's no getting away from it. I mean, I'm bombarded with my learning things at work. In fact, I think I need to slow it down a bit. But the point is, for you to be relevant and for you to feel confident about doing your job, you are going to have to be a lifelong learner. You may not need to go and have a degree in a specific technology, but you need to show interest in being able to understand the technology, how it works, how it impacts you, and which technologies are relevant for you to develop in your job as well. Number 12 is the empowering leader. Shows trust in followers and builds their confidence to make good decisions and enhance their capacity to promote the organization's collective goals. I want people to see that you've got to show confidence in your teams to make the right decisions. No team leader is going to be able to do everything in their team. You rely on your team members. So you've got to empower them to make the right decision that you trust yourself. You trust them to make the right decision, because you're not going to be in every meeting with every stakeholder and they are going to make some of those decisions. So you need to make sure that you empower your teams. So those leaders who say, no, man, if I empower this person, they're going to take my job. Yes. 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 You've got to empower them to a point where they push you out of it now so that you can rise and they can move in. You've got to absolutely do that. And you've got to reward and celebrate great work. No such thing as if I tell them they are good, they're going to get arrogant and get a big head. Celebrate great work. Be confident as a leader to celebrate your people as well. Number 13, EQ. EQ is the foundation of it all, guys. The best thing that ever happened to me was working with an executive coach who taught me and helped me understand the importance of EQ. EQ, understand and manage the impact of your emotions on other people. Listen and empathize to other people. Understand and manage the impact of emotion on own behavior. Connect and with employees, mobilize, inspire them, motivate them, maintain presence of thinking and different experiences. And manage your team members differently. Colleen, Ntombi, Paula, Patricia were not the same. Don't talk to me the same. Just understand what is the best way to get results out of Colleen. What is the best ways to get results out of Ntombi? And this is what EQ is about. You identifying and managing your emotions and others' emotions, because that also helps you to understand when you're dealing with difficult stakeholders, how do you then connect with them as well? You cannot afford to not have the EQ foundation. Number 14, these are the two that I told you they added. The authentic storyteller, using storytelling techniques to share experiences, disclose emotions to connect with teams as well. And we have the behaviors there. Disclose self as a human being in an authentic way. Share emotions in an authentic way with followers, using storytelling. Share experiences with followers, using storytelling. Connect with team members, using storytelling, and show sincerity as well. And guys, we all know, particularly in the space of equity, inclusion, diversity, the power of storytelling. When you tell stories and younger people are listening to you, they suddenly believe that I can do it too. And suddenly we have a yes, we can movement. So storytelling is powerful, and leaders should really tell their journey to their teams as well. And finally, but not the least, it's number 15, the leader who understands that in as much as this is a corporate environment, this is also my organization. I also need to be thinking in a way to say, if I'm managing my own business as well, what do I do? So it is about creating that culture where people take initiative, where people challenge the existing paradigms. When we challenge the existing paradigm, we're able to find new ways of working, innovating as well, and also encourage employees to experiment and recognize initiatives that would actually bring in new revenues. You've got to try new things. You've got to test. You've got to fail. You've got to stand up. You've got to try again. Fail fast, but don't give up and keep trying again. So how many of you have got these leaders in your organization? I gave you 15 roles, and I gave you many other behaviors. Come on, guys. Come on, guys. Somebody's got to have a leader like this.
Okay, so we don't particularly have it under this function, but what we recently introduced is anybody from the company can introduce any business idea they want to, from the lower level to the top level at Cummins, and the leadership will then take that on.
Absolutely.
And go on that. So that's something that we introduced.
Absolutely, absolutely. You've got to do that. So guys, this is really my journey. And I then looked at, based on where the employees, after the managers, I interviewed about 275 employees to say, are they doing it? And what do you think they are good at? And this is the area of all the roles. This is the area. Remember here I say 4 being the lowest. This is the area that leaders are weakest at. So they seem to be getting the ambiguity, all the others. Number 4 is the priority in terms of this is where the change management, the improvements need to take place. Our leaders are not so strong at being systems thinker, virtual team managers, innovators, technology ethics and values manager, and data interpretation and application. This is what the people who are working with the managers are saying. They're saying our leaders are weakest there, and the other areas, that's how they're performing. Okay? And this is really the end. And I had a wonderful time. To all my friends who supported me through my journey, to everybody who believed in me, thank you very much. I also had an examiner die during my PhD. And actually, when the new examiner came in, he said, no, I want to start again. So my year was extended as well. So it's been quite a journey, but I have absolutely loved learning about leadership, how people are experiencing managers, what they believe managers should be doing. It's also fascinating to hear what the managers are saying and the gap between what the employees and the leaders are also saying. But ladies and gentlemen, that is me, and I hope you found my model interesting. Thank you. So I would be happy to take any questions on the floor, or comments, or people want to challenge, why did I do it this way? Why did I do it another way? I'd be fascinated to see what you guys are having to say. Yes, Paula?
Well, I was going to challenge you on the 5th Industrial Revolution, so I'm glad you touched on that.
Yes. No. I actually did go into it, but like I said, we've got to go home at some point, right? So the 5th Industrial Revolution, actually, I did add a chapter on it as well. Looking at how it's relevant and how it is linked, and you can't separate the two. And the model is built in such a way that it needs to evolve, right? It needs to evolve. If you look at the technologies that we're dealing with, and you look at the new things that are coming in, year out, there's no ways you can say in 10 years' time this would be relevant as is, but you're constantly upgrading as well. But if you're asking me as to whether I'm doing a second PhD, Paula? No comment. But absolutely.
Just a question out of those 15 profiles, leadership roles you put up there, without boxing and labeling people, because we don't like to do that, but where would you see HR fitting in? Because HR should be a key position at at the table, at the exco or senior table, because your people are your business, right?
Yeah.
And if your people aren't well, your business isn't well.
Correct.
So if you had to box them and label them, where would you kind of put them?
I think number one, HR fall into the category of leaders for me. And for me, HR should also be displaying any and all of those things, right? That's number one. And I think what you're raising is very relevant in the sense that HR seems to think there's the leaders and then there's us. And I think HR needs to change their point of view. I think they are also leaders and they also need to be displaying all of these qualities, because I think the challenge I'm experiencing in many of the organizations I've been with, and I also have a lot of HR specialists, directors, etc. in my circle of influence, is that HR, I don't know if it's a care of you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, you're never going to win, right? Because HR believes that they are there for the people, but the people feel HR drops me the minute a manager says that, and they will compromise me for the manager. So I actually think HR specialists are in a very difficult role, where people want to trust them, but people feel if I trust them, I could actually get burned. But actually, I think if you are an employee who is self-assured and understanding, you will trust the HR process. And I want to encourage people to trust the HR process. Obviously, HR also needs to give you a reason to buy into why you should trust them. But I would argue that we've got to trust the HR process in order for us to be authentically show up at work 100% and to be happy.
Yeah, because HR definitely is the ham in the sandwich.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks.
Hey.
Hi. My name is Boya. I'm from JSE. Thank you very much for this. It was really interesting. The storytelling is a very powerful tool indeed, and it's nice that you're also introducing what people tend to think are the soft skills, but the hardest skills.
Yes.
I was wondering, from your thesis, what insights came out about resilience? Because what we learned in the last 3 years is people struggle with mental health issues, but also resilience during change. So was there a particular role that probably came out of that, or is it integrated in some of the other leadership profiles?
Fantastic question. I think it's absolutely integrated, because if you look at a lot of the findings from the survey of the employees, the 275 people that I was talking about, they were talking about a lot of these qualities. They feel managers need to display these qualities so that they become resilient, which is an interesting dichotomy, because think about it. Whether a manager displays these roles and behaviors or not, you as an individual need to learn to be resilient. But you also, I think what I was picking up is that the trend of people who I was interviewing coming into the organization, the management trainees, the interns, the lower levels of staff as well, they think very differently to the rest of us more experienced workers, wherein they expect to be fed and then they will be empowered to do, versus the rest of us are coming where I've got to do this, I've got to do this. It's very different. So what I picked up was that they feel in order to be resilient, they need managers who provide and create an environment that allows them to be resilient. And I'm simply saying, whether that environment is there or not, you've got to be self-starter in creating your own resilience as well. But I'm sure you're also seeing it in a lot of young people when they join organizations. Some of the questions they're asking, right? I mean, I'm interviewing people and people are asking me, do I have to come into the office every single day, right? So these young people are asking questions that traditionally we wouldn't ask, because you know what, it just comes with the package. But they are challenging us. And also, when you give them an environment that's very stressful, high pressured, lots of deadlines, you switch them off. Have you seen that? That's what I'm saying. It can't be a case of I need to create resilient people. It needs to be a combination. You need to create your resilience, but I will also empower you as a manager. So I think there's a different way in the way we are hiring the new people coming in. They operate differently, they see the world differently, they experience leaders in a different way. They actually think in a way that you as a leader will be surprised to say, oh my God, how did that person get there? So we really need to unlearn in understanding how we are taking on these new young people coming into the organization.
Okay.
There was a question here. Yeah.
Such a beautiful and fascinating piece of research that you've done here. I had a couple of ahas while you were talking, and one of them was, for me personally, I'm somebody that doesn't struggle with change. But what you made me realize is that not everybody is like me, and I see how in previous leadership roles I may have left people behind because I assume they are like me. So my question to you is, how do you now take this information to the rest of the world so that people like me and others can be challenged to start rethinking their leadership paradigms? How do we show up as leaders? What do we need to do differently? Because this is just so phenomenal.
I think we need to ask Colleen how she's taking me to the rest of the world.
Okay.
No, but very relevant, and I'm glad you get it. You get it because I was very surprised to learn that, because to me this became the norm, this was normal. In fact, this was hygiene for me. It wasn't even anything new, it was hygiene. And one, I have not been sharing my results. This is actually the first time I've agreed to share my results. That's number one. Number two, I do agree that we need to do more of this, so I am going to start my publishing journey as well. Number three, it's me being in forums like this where I am willing and open and saying, here's the model. Take it, discuss it in your organization, change it up, add your own roles, add your own behaviors. It's me being willing to share that knowledge that I've built on and people playing with it and actually asking their organization, are we where we need to be? But you are asking me a question that I don't necessarily have an answer for, but you're right in that we do need to do more storytelling around this for people to understand. And you're very right. I also almost made the mistake of leaving people behind, saying these people are not interested, but actually they're battling with it. They're battling with the changes. It's not normal, it's not easy. And because you and I, it's easy for us, we will just say, I'm over this one. You can't, because that might be your next shining star. So let me find a plan about how I take this to the world. Thank you for challenging me.
When you were answering Vu, you dropped another
Aha moment.
Yeah, because dealing with the millennials, they're not going to go away.
No, they're not.
And it's like a fundamentally different animal. You need to learn how to work with them. Because they ask questions that for me and you're like,
yes,
what?
exactly.
You have to come to the office like, what is this thing? Yeah, but for them, there's nothing untoward about that, and we need to be able to work together.
Absolutely. I have one of my team members is a very young lady who one day burst out crying on a Friday. We're at the office, and we're like, what's going on? She's like, my friends are at the bar, and I'm still at work. I'm like, okay, I know I've got to deal with a lot. I'm working so hard to deal with this. I want to be at the bar too. Are there any other questions?
So just a quick comment. I work for Cummins, and I work within our CR department, and I like what you said about communities and having a strategic way of platform businesses to come together. Yes. So I run a project called Technical Education for Communities within the Cummins space. But I think for my organization, we are very forward thinking. So we have dealt in a lot of these things, right? But I think the one thing that is always important is that when a leader steps into a leadership role, we assume that they already have what they need. Yes. And we don't understand that not everybody is born as a leader. That person needs to be trained to become that leader, and that authentic kind of leader, the transformational type of leader. So you really need to build up and invest continually in your leadership.
100%. 100%. I couldn't disagree. Beautiful. I felt there was a hand on that end.
First of all, happy Women's Day, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
The two of us are dead crashing. Glad to be here. I have 4 questions. Thank you for a wonderful presentation, Doctor. But the question I have, one is on ownership, because a lot of the stuff requires us to own. And it seems to me that and I'm sorry to say, but as a nation, we're not owning what we see. Riot, first thing, what do? We destroy. So ownership is important. And second question is, do you think, you spoke about vulnerability, do you think that national culture of boys don't cry can translate into let's be vulnerable in the workplace. Do you think it's possible? How do we get ourselves to that? Third question, you spoke about the change mind, a mindset that's ready to change. Difficult, as the lady has pointed out. I mean, that's just difficult. It's easy to say I'm not going to do
But it's not impossible.
It's not impossible. So the question is, can you actually teach an old dog new tricks?
I love that.
And then lastly, last question is at board level.
Yes.
What are you expecting in terms of leadership? Because board provide oversight. Within the traditional context, committee is big on board development,
yes,
particularly for women, and I'm glad to participate in that program. So my question is, how does the board show up with all that you are saying here? Thank you.
The board shows up with your first question, ownership. If you agree to be on a board, you make decisions that impact not only the internal stakeholders and the employees, but the shareholders as well. Anything that goes wrong, board members need to take accountability for it. And that is a culture that I don't believe is necessarily ingrained in South Africa, because a lot of things are going wrong and we're not seeing anything happen to any board members, right? So board members need to be the leaders that we saw. Board members need to also embrace those roles. You are a leader sitting at that table. It's got nothing to do with the leaders in the organization. You're just a board member. You are still a leader, and you need to make decisions based on the data. You need to, as a board member, encourage the collaboration, encourage the innovation, encourage leaders in the organization that you're sitting on as the board to be empathetic and to deal with employees in a relevant way given the context and the time. So board members also need to be the very same leaders that we are saying need to be relevant for the fourth industrial revolution.
Which to the curriculum.
And ownership is very important. And you know what I'm learning, guys? And sorry, I'm going to make a very vulnerable statement. Sometimes I sit and I watch our country and I say, how are we being raised? How are families coming together? Because when I grew up, there was a very clear wrong and right? You know, you can't go and trash and this and that. So I don't understand why we've now embraced this culture of destroying our country, destroying the hospitals, the traffic lights, the very same schools we are burning down. I don't know what is going on. It's not my area, but I am devastated. And what I am saying is, as communities, what is crystal clear to me is that we need to take ownership of our communities, our infrastructure in our communities, and we need to teach the very same young people who are in our areas destroying, or the very same elderly, whoever it is, we need to stop them. We're not going to have enough police, enough people from the SANDF. The communities need to play a role in protecting their own infrastructure as well. So you spoke ownership, you spoke the board, you spoke the two in the middle. Tell me. Vulnerability.
Change mindset, don't bother.
You know, I don't know what school of thought you come from, but vulnerability is a sign of strength. And I think the problem is that because we raised men don't cry, we assume when people are vulnerable, they are showing weakness. I don't believe vulnerability is a sign of weakness. In fact, I think vulnerability grounds you and shows your team members that you are human, that you have problems too, and the fact that they are going through a hard time, you also go through a hard time. And therefore, it builds a sense of I can relate and a sense of trust, and therefore builds a stronger team. So, to people raising young boys, young women, their families, etc., you need to allow people to show emotion. How many books are written about kids who say, my parents never showed emotion, I never learned how to show love, I never learned how to make mistakes, etc. And that's why we have a situation where people make mistakes, or when people are wrong, or when people are stealing. They say, it's my right to steal. It's my right to steal, because we have not taught people that, guys, when you've made a mistake and you've done something wrong, just say, I'm wrong. I'm wrong. And own it. Everything goes back to your question number one. In fact, you answered all of your questions with question number one. You know, you've got to own that. We're not saying people are perfect. You've got to own that when things are right, they're great, let's celebrate. But when things are bad and you were wrong, just own it. Doesn't make you a bad person, doesn't mean you're incapable as a leader. Own the mistakes and move on, learn from it, fix it, that's it. I hope I've answered you. And I hope you've told your sons and daughters that it's okay to advance.
Sorry, last question.
Okay, just
Last question.
No, Ntombi, just following up on vulnerability. I'm just thinking because of the competitive nature of businesses, I feel like it doesn't allow people to be vulnerable because it's high performance delivered, If you come out to be vulnerable, it's like, this is not a fit, we need to get rid of this person. So don't you think that competition in businesses, it's got a lot to do with, not for people?
I think number one, if you're a leader who's always running and not taking time out to pause and reflect, you're not a good leader. Yes, high performance delivered, we're on the rush, we're on pressure, etc., etc. Everybody's got to stop at some point. Everybody's got to reflect. Everybody's got to apply that EQ. Everybody's got to stop and read and look at what the data is saying. And I hear what you're saying, but I reject it at the same time. I reject it because the truth is, if we don't build organizations that allow a culture of inclusivity, vulnerability, equality, and a place where people can be authentically themselves, wherein you are managing their mental health, you're not going to succeed as an organization. We know it says, if you look at all the research around inclusion, diversity, it talks about companies that create a particular culture where people can feel that they can be themselves, where people feel that they can be vulnerable, where people feel that they can share that this, I have depression, I have OCD, I have this. Those companies who create a culture like that are known to be more profitable, bring in more revenue, their employees are innovating more, etc. So I'm simply saying, yes, it's not the norm. But we are saying we need to move away from the norm and we need to inculcate these inclusive cultures that allow these behaviors to thrive. It's very simple, guys. I mean, when we look at things like, a lot of you have heard the story about Kodak and everything, It's because you don't listen to other people, let's shelve it, let's pack it away, then you become bankrupt. You become bankrupt. So these are the cultures we know are relevant for the future. And the research shows it. So we're not having the discussions of should we not. It's about when are we doing it. It's that simple.
Sorry, we need to close.
Last question.
As long as it's a quick one.
Yeah, no, it's a quick one. Speaking in terms of being yourself.
Yes.
There's this trending about who's in trouble right now by being himself, but on the other hand, doing what he's supposed to do, but because he's himself. I've forgotten his name, but it's trending now. Yes.
Sorry? And what's the story?
Look, those are allegations, but I read an article saying that so he's a doctor, he's very himself and enjoying himself, and he was just playing around with the furniture at the hospital. He's a good one. It's been trending for the past 2 days. So what had happened was that it is alleged that somebody lodged a complaint for him being so super happy and excited, and they're saying that that is not according to the requirements of the HPCSA. Just to be super hyper and happy at work and portraying different traits than what has been prescribed. Oh my word.
Thank you for proving the relevance of my Thank you for proving the relevance of my model. The problem there is not necessarily the person, the problem is the leadership. You have proved, thank you for ending my talk on such a high note. You proved why we need this leadership model and why leaders need to embrace these behaviors. I hope I've answered you.
Fantastic.
I must tell you that it's Ntombi's birthday. We have taken leave decided to come and spend your birthday with us here this morning.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Ntombi. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being with us here this morning. Thank you to all of those that are online. For those of you who are joining us for the next session, it's starting off at 11, promptly at 11. So you're welcome to go and get a cup of coffee, have something to eat. But please make sure that you're downstairs. If you are joining us at 11, we kick starting at 11 sharp.
We're downstairs.
Downstairs. As you came into the building, you saw